The Galactic Council was in turmoil. They sat in a vast, translucent dome high above the planet Vornak, a world known for its pristine biomes and alien delicacies, but none of that mattered right now. What mattered was that humans were causing a galactic crisis, and if something wasn't done quickly, the entire balance of the universe would be upended. "Everyone, please, let's maintain order," the voice of President Zorvak echoed through the chamber. Zorvak, a five-eyed, purple-skinned alien from the planet Kryx, rubbed his temples in frustration. His kind had evolved on a world where emotions were suppressed, making it hard to comprehend the sheer chaos humans created when it came to mating. "We have to focus. The problem is clear. Humans are mating with everything." "It's more than that, Zorvak," said Counselor Rylak, an amphibious creature with gills pulsing on his neck. His voice was thick with concern. "It's spreading. Not just within our Federation but across the galaxy. They don't even stop at other species. There are reports of humans mating with virtual entities, machines, and even abstract concepts." Yes, we've all seen the reports," Zorvak snapped, flipping through holographic data sheets. "Humans are breeding with vending machines, artificial intelligences, even their own online personas. Some human tried to form a relationship with the concept of hunger. It's becoming uncontrollable." He flicked his fingers, and the data shifted to show the terrifying stats. Human-to-human interspecies mating, human-to-digital mating, even a human mating with an entire planet, an ongoing case that was only now being investigated. He rubbed his eyes. "It's beyond biology. Beyond everything. These humans, why can't they just stop?" A murmur of disbelief spread through the council. The aliens sat in stunned silence. The thought that a single species, one so young, so primitive in their eyes, could destabilize the delicate systems they had carefully curated over centuries was too much to bear. "You're all missing the bigger picture," interjected Vlok, a mechanical intelligence that had evolved sentient self-awareness after centuries of repair. "We don't just have a mating crisis. We have a breeding program crisis. Humans are combining their genetic material in ways we didn't think possible. They're making hybrids, powerful hybrids, who have traits from not only their own species but from everything they come into contact with." "Yes," said Zorvak, nodding slowly. "And it's threatening our economy. If these hybrids continue to propagate, they'll disrupt the workforce, destabilize our economies. We can't have a half-human, half-Gorksorian coming in and taking over financial management. That Gorksorian was known for its ruthless efficiency." "Humans," said Rylak, shaking his head. "I'll never understand them. We've all seen the footage. The human Jeb, who tried to mate with a quantum singularity to experience time differently, it literally collapsed a star. And then there's the human who was actually falling in love with a sentient supercomputer that only communicates in binary code. Their motivations defy logic." The room was tense, the air practically vibrating with the frustration of ancient species who had carefully evolved their ways of life only to have this unruly, unpredictable race break all the rules. The last straw had been the unexpected report. A human, known only as Tina, had somehow forged an intimate bond with the very idea of freedom. That concept was intangible, abstract, and now there was a diplomatic rift forming over it. The philosophical ramifications alone were enough to send entire alien factions into a frenzy. "We need a solution," Zorvak said, straightening his posture. "And we need it now." "I've been thinking about this," said Drux, a slippery gelatinous being with no true form. Drux had a tendency to speak in riddles, but for once, he was deadly serious. "Perhaps we can contain this crisis by creating a universal mating guideline. Something simple. Something humans can't resist." The council murmured in agreement. "Yes, we could use their love of rules against them," Zorvak said, tapping his fingers on the podium. "We will implement a set of regulations, stricter than any they've ever seen. A mating license, maybe? Something official that requires government approval before interspecies activities." "That's the answer? A license?" Counselor Bort, a four-armed insectoid from Kra, blinked twice. "We are talking about a species that already married their smartphones, and now we think a license will stop them?" Well, said Zorvok, at least we'll have some sort of official record to track their mating habits. We need to monitor their every move. If we catch them mating outside approved partners, we issue a fine. They'll get the hint. Or we'll throw them into a quarantine zone where they can only breed with sanctioned species. That'll keep things under control. Bort raised a skeptical eyebrow. And you honestly think that will work? You know humans have the unique ability to circumvent regulations. This won't stop them. They'll find some way to break it. We'll tighten the regulations then, Zorvok said grimly. If one thing's true about humans, it's that they will adapt. And we will out-adapt them. The council was silent for a moment as the implications of what they had just decided began to sink in. It felt like a drastic measure, an overstep even. But there was no other choice. Zorvok finally stood up. I will contact the Breeding Bureau. We'll need all hands on deck for this. The license program starts tomorrow. His voice grew quieter, almost a whisper, but it was enough to send chills through the chamber. If we don't stop them now, we might very well be breeding our own destruction. One by one, the aliens filed out of the chamber, each one contemplating how best to handle the unpredictable, chaotic force that was humanity. Would they succeed in curbing this madness? Or would they be forever chasing after a species that seemed determined to break every boundary in the galaxy, especially the ones of reproduction? As Zorvok sat back in his chair, staring out into the cosmos, he couldn't help but wonder. What other species had humans already mated with in their far-reaching exploration of the stars? The Breeding Bureau was not exactly known for its efficiency. In fact, it was the government's least celebrated department, nestled in a dull concrete building on Earth, far from the sleek, high-tech operations of intergalactic diplomacy. But today, its office was buzzing with activity. The situation had escalated to a point where even the most jaded bureaucrat couldn't ignore it. New report, Agent Marnus said flatly, tossing a holographic tablet onto the desk. Another human has mated with a sentient drone. This time, it's some kind of old military surveillance unit. It's been completely reprogrammed to serve as a— he made air quotes with his fingers. Companion. We can't keep doing this. Agent Rilke groaned, her 3 tentacles flexing in irritation. Every time we think we've got them contained, another human finds some loophole in the system. Last month, one of them dated a houseplant. A sentient houseplant. I mean, what are we supposed to do with that? I told you the apps were a mistake, Marna muttered. They think this is a game. We gave them too many ways to connect with other beings, and now look what we've got. Rilke rolled her eyes. We're supposed to be stopping them from mating with non-approved species, not creating more channels for them to do whatever they want. Marna's brow furrowed. Maybe we need to rethink the entire approach. More control. More rules. It's the only way. If we make mating outside the species more inconvenient, it might slow them down. A high-pitched chime interrupted their conversation. It was the Bureau's internal alert system, flashing an urgent message from the Galactic Council. Rilke squinted at the screen. Her eyes widened. Well, that's new. She stared at the notification. The Council is mandating a universal breeding license. What does that even mean? Marnu asked, visibly perplexed. It means we're going to have to officially regulate all human mating activity, Rilke said, her voice tinged with disbelief. They're putting the entire galaxy on notice. Every human has to get clearance before doing anything. Marna grunted in frustration. That's just going to make them fight back harder. If there's one thing humans hate, it's more bureaucracy. They'll find some way around it. Rilke slumped into her chair. Great. So we'll have to issue mating permits for humans? They're going to think it's some kind of joke. We might as well be handing out licenses for self-expression. Actually, they'll probably love that part, Marna said, rubbing his chin. They've been breeding with their digital avatars for years now. This is practically an upgrade for them. Rilke stared at him, then at the screen again. I can't even imagine the paperwork for this. I mean, who's going to process all of this? Are we supposed to personally approve every human who wants to mate with a sentient coffee machine? How are we supposed to vet this? The screen flashed with more updates. The rules were clear. Every human had to undergo a thorough genetic screening before mating with any species, whether biological, digital, or otherwise. They need a cosmic compatibility report, a behavioral analysis, and most absurd of all, approval from a licensed interspecies counselor. It was a nightmarish bureaucratic machine, all designed to keep humans from ruining the galactic order. All right, fine. Let's get to work, Marna said reluctantly. I'll start drafting the new guidelines. Someone's going to need to create a proper system for mating licenses. And don't forget to add the fines for illegal interspecies activity. He sighed. This is going to be a mess. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, humans were doing their thing. They didn't need permission to connect with whatever or whoever they felt like. They were already one step ahead, as usual. Back on Earth, Tina, a human woman who had recently fallen in love with the concept of freedom, was having a typical day. She just sent a heartfelt message to the abstract notion of autonomy, a move that had unintentionally sparked an intergalactic debate over whether it was even legal to fall in love with something that wasn't a living entity. She was busy discussing her upcoming date with the idea of freedom on a social media platform when a notification popped up on her phone. You've been flagged for unauthorized mating activity. Please submit your breeding license application. She stared at the message. What in the... Her confusion turned to amusement. Oh great, now they want paperwork to be in love with a concept. Isn't that cute? Said her friend Mark, leaning over her shoulder. Now the government wants to control who you can fall in love with. Classic. Oh, I'm sure they'll find a way to make it a 5-step process, Tina said with a sarcastic laugh. You'll need a genetic profile, a psychological evaluation, and I'm sure they'll want to take a look at my social media interactions, too. Sounds like a fun weekend. Mark deadpanned. Good luck with that. Tina rolled her eyes. You know, they're probably right about one thing. Humans do breed with everything. She gestured to the coffee machine in the corner of her apartment. I'm still waiting for my permit to date this guy. She joked, tapping the side of the machine. Mark snorted. Oh, I'm sure there's an entire paperwork process for that one. He pulled out his phone. I'll bet you $50 they find a way to charge us for breeding with consumer goods in the next month. Done, Tina said with a laugh. And you'll owe me, because no one's going to stop me from mating with my coffee machine. Back at the breeding bureau, Rilke and Marna were still grappling with the task ahead. Marna stared at the screen where the list of new regulations was displayed. I think we've crossed a line, he muttered. We're going to need an army just to process the forms. Rilke groaned. Can't we just issue a universal mating license for humans and call it a day? The paperwork alone is going to be massive. We'll need teams just to handle the incoming data. And half of them won't even know which species they're legally allowed to breed with. Marna gave her a pointed look. Well, it's not like we have a choice, is it? No, she replied. But let's just say if they're planning on breeding with AI, machines, and entire concepts, I'm going to need more than a couple of forms and a plastic stamp to stop them. It's like trying to herd a million hormonal cats with ADD. Nothing's ever going to be simple again. They both fell silent, staring at the glowing screen filled with data that would soon flood their office. Somewhere in the galaxy, humanity was already finding new ways to circumvent the rules, to test the limits of the bizarre new order the Bureau was trying to impose. Maybe, Marna muttered after a pause, we should just get comfortable with the idea that humans are always going to be one step ahead. If this keeps up, the next step is probably them mating with an entire planet just for the thrill of it. Rilke nodded grimly. And if they do, we'll be right here, filling out the paperwork. The countdown to interspecies chaos had officially begun. The Galactic Council's latest initiative was already crumbling under the weight of its own absurdity. Despite all the new regulations, despite the layers of red tape designed to curtail humanity's untamed reproductive instincts, there was one undeniable truth. Humans had no respect for authority. No respect for rules. no respect for anything. And now, the once proud Bureau was drowning in paperwork while the humans, well, they were still doing whatever the hell they wanted. Council is losing faith in us, Marna muttered, tapping away at the screen in front of him. The new breeding license laws are a joke. They don't even take us seriously anymore. I told you, Rilke said, rolling her eyes as she slid another thick stack of paperwork into a disposal chute. The moment we started treating human mating like a bureaucratic transaction, we lost the battle. And it's only going to get worse, Marnu added, leaning back in his chair. I just saw another report. A human has somehow forged a mating contract with a molecular structure, asterisk again star dot. That's it, Rilke said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Mating with the very fabric of reality. Next thing you know, they'll be breeding with theoretical particles or, I don't know, the concept of time. Where does it end? Marner threw his hands up in frustration. I don't know. Every day, it's something new. Yesterday, they were engaged with a sentient asteroid. What next? A committed relationship with a black hole? Sorry, honey, I can't make it to dinner. I've got a date with entropy. Rilke snorted. Yeah, I'm sure that'll be the new trend. Humans will be filling out mating licenses for things like singularities, cosmic dust, and the void. At least the paperwork will get interesting. It's not funny, Rilke. The Council is expecting results. They're calling for immediate action. They want us to stop this before it completely destabilizes the whole galaxy. And it will, if we don't figure out a way to make this more official, more regulated. Humanity will breed itself into the dominant force in the universe. Rilke frowned. We're already there, aren't we? Everywhere I go, I hear the same thing. Humans are adapting too quickly. They're hybridizing at a pace no other species can keep up with. And now the Council wants us to contain them? Good luck with that. Marnu slammed his fist on the desk. We have to try. The alternatives are too extreme. We can't just let them go on mating with whatever the hell they want. They're too creative, too unpredictable. And that's the problem. We've given them too much freedom. The door to the office slid open, and a new agent, a young human intern who had been assigned to the Bureau in some desperate attempt to understand Earth's mating behaviors, stepped in. She looked wide-eyed, wearing an expression that was equal parts excitement and confusion. I've got news, she said, her voice quivering. I think I found the answer. Marnu and Rilke exchanged a glance. The answer? Marnu repeated. What are you talking about? The intern nodded enthusiastically, holding up her tablet. You won't believe it, but I've figured out what humans are really doing. The real reason they keep mating with random species, and it's not what you think. Rilke's brow furrowed. Explain. Well, the intern said, taking a deep breath. They're experimenting with the future. They're not mating just for reproduction or pleasure, at least, not in the way we understand it. It's about evolution. They're looking for ways to accelerate their genetic adaptability. Every new species they mate with, every new hybrid they create, it's like they're making themselves better with every partner. It's like they're trying to become unstoppable. Marna's face twitched. Unstoppable? He echoed, his voice low. You mean to tell me this isn't some random, chaotic lust for variety? It's strategy? Exactly, the intern said, tapping the screen. Humans have a much deeper drive than we thought. They're making hybrids that can survive anywhere. With every new relationship, they're evolving, becoming more adaptable, more resistant to everything. You think they're trying to breed a new super race? Rilke asked skeptically. The intern hesitated, then nodded. Maybe not a super race, but they are trying to make themselves the most adaptable species in the universe. They're not thinking about just surviving, they're thinking about conquering. Marnu and Rilke exchanged another look, this one more serious. That explains so much, Marna muttered. The Breeding Bureau isn't just preventing interspecies relationships, Rilke said, more to herself than anyone else. We're inadvertently pushing humanity into a corner. If they keep adapting this way, they're going to be impossible to control. They won't need us. And we'll be left holding the paperwork. Great, Marna grumbled. So what now? Do we start issuing mating permits for evolutionary advancement? Maybe we can set up a whole new section in the Bureau for genetic experimentation. Or we could just admit defeat, Roka suggested dryly. I mean, the more we try to control them, the more creative they get. The only way to keep them contained at this point is to, what? Start rationing how many species they can breed with. Stop them from mating with AI. Should we throw in a line for no metaphysical entities allowed? Marna grimaced. We can't just let them go. We have to do something. Well, Roka said with a small grin, if you can find a way to stop them from mating with abstract concepts, then I'll believe we still have a shot at this. Just then, a new notification popped up on their screens. Another human had found a loophole, of course. This time, they had somehow convinced a rogue AI to generate a mating partner for them. The AI had created a virtual being who was a perfect match genetically, but this was the kicker, it was entirely fabricated. No physical presence, no real biological material involved. Just digital pure potential. Great, Marna muttered, rubbing his eyes. They're mating with data now. Rilke chuckled darkly. What's next? Are they going to fall in love with their own code? Marna was silent for a moment. Maybe that's exactly what we should be doing, he said quietly. If humanity is mating with everything and anything to improve itself, maybe the only way to stop them is to join them. Find a way to evolve the Bureau. Rilke raised an eyebrow. Evolve the Bureau? Why not? Marna said, a small grin creeping onto his face. Maybe if we adapt, if we hybridize the system a little, take a page from their book, then we can stay one step ahead. We become part of the creative chaos. Rilke stared at him for a moment, then leaned back in her chair. You're actually serious, aren't you? Marna shrugged. At this point, I think it's our only option. Maybe the Bureau needs to mate with a new idea, something beyond bureaucracy. If we can't stop humans from evolving, maybe we can evolve alongside them. The idea lingered in the air, ridiculous as it sounded. But then again, everything about this situation had been ridiculous from the start. I guess, Rilke said with a smirk. It's the only way forward. But first, we should probably figure out how to stop them from mating with entire concepts. I'm not sure the Bureau's ready for a romance with time. The Breeding Bureau's situation had reached a tipping point. The new mating regulations were nothing more than a paper tiger. Humans, in their infinite creativity, had already found countless ways to sidestep the laws and continue their absurd, unchecked interspecies relationships. But even worse, some had begun to question the Bureau's very authority. Who were they to tell humans who they could and couldn't mate with? And the more the Bureau pushed, the more humans pushed back. It was a runaway train, and the Galactic Council was watching with mounting concern. Marnu sat hunched over his terminal, scrolling through the latest batch of reports. Each one was more ridiculous than the last. One human had been caught trying to mate with a phantom limb, the leftover sensation from a missing body part. Another had developed a romantic connection to the feeling of nostalgia. And of course, there were the inevitable cases of humans seeking companionship with entire ecosystems. The ecosystem relationships were especially tricky since they argued the planet was alive, in the sense that it had its own consciousness. This is insane, Marna muttered under his breath. We can't keep up. There's no end to it. Rilke leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. At this rate, we'll be issuing permits for humans to date thoughts in a couple of months. Sorry, ma'am, you'll need approval from your designated idea guardian before you can marry your sense of purpose. Don't joke about that, Marna groaned. It might just happen. At this point, I wouldn't put it past them. And the council expects results, Rilke replied, her voice dripping with sarcasm. As if paperwork and mating licenses will stop them. We've tried everything, and all we've done is give them more ways to be creative. They're outsmarting us. Marnu slammed his hand on the desk. It's not just that. The hybrids they're creating, they're becoming more powerful than we ever imagined. We're talking about humans with the adaptability of 10 different species, blending together genetic traits we don't even fully understand yet. And they're multiplying faster than we can process the forms. It's like trying to contain a supernova with a net. Roka raised an eyebrow. What if we stopped trying to control them? What if we let them go a little wild? I mean, humans thrive on chaos. Maybe we've been too heavy-handed. Marna's eyes widened. You're saying we should encourage their mating habits? Maybe, Roka said slowly. We stop treating it like a crime and start looking at it as an evolution. They'll push boundaries no matter what we do. So why not redefine the boundaries? Let them go crazy, but set a limit, make it a controlled experiment. That way, we still get to keep an eye on them, but we're not constantly on the defensive. And who knows, we might learn something useful in the process. Marnu leaned back, considering the idea. You're talking about giving them freedom, with structure? Exactly, Roka said, her tone growing more confident. If they're going to breed with everything under the sun, let's at least make sure they're doing it in a way that doesn't collapse the galaxy. But we can't just keep throwing rules at them. It's time to adapt. I don't know. Marna trailed off, unsure. What if they just take it too far? I mean, last week, a human tried mating with an entire storm cloud. And don't get me started on the human who wanted to marry an alternate dimension of themselves. How do we even regulate that? That's the beauty of it, Roka said with a sly grin. We don't regulate it. We make it an option, and we make them choose. Here's what I'm thinking, a licensing system that's completely transparent. We allow humans to pick their mating experiments but with clear guidelines. Maybe something like, if they choose a non-traditional mate, they have to sign a waiver, proving they understand the risks of, reality collapse or interdimensional war. We even have a sanctioned species list to help guide them. Marnu rubbed his temples. And you think that's going to work? I don't know, Rilke admitted. But what else do we have? Every time we try to contain them, they break through. Maybe the only way to handle a species this chaotic is to work with it. Marnu was quiet for a long moment, processing the weight of Rilke's suggestion. The idea of working with the chaos sounded more like a desperate gamble than a solid plan, but maybe that was the only way left. All right, he said finally. I'll draft the new policy. We'll make it official, a freedom-based mating program. We'll allow humans to experiment, but they'll need to prove they can handle the consequences. At least this way, we can keep track of what they're doing. Maybe we'll even get some insights into their strange creativity. Rilke nodded. And we make it clear, no breeding with sentient concepts. No marrying your own emotional baggage. If we see anyone in a relationship with, say, the idea of self-doubt, we throw them into quarantine. Fine, Marna said, already typing away at his terminal. But we need to make one thing clear, we can't give them total freedom. There's got to be a line somewhere. No mating with anything that might destroy the fabric of reality itself. Agreed, Rilke said. And the mating waiver will be mandatory. If they're going to experiment with reality, they've got to sign off on the risks. No exceptions. The plan, as ridiculous as it seemed, was their best shot. They would present it to the council, sell it as a compromise, and hope that humanity would actually want some level of structure, though that was a stretch, even by their standards. But it was the only way they could stop trying to control them in every moment. It would give humanity the illusion of freedom while maintaining just enough oversight to ensure the galaxy didn't collapse under their weight. As Marna finalized the last of the policy documents, the internal communications system pinged. A new report came in. Another human had decided to mate with the concept of longevity. In other words, they had decided to make an eternal connection with the idea of living forever. Marna let out a low sigh, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. That's it. We're done. Rilke didn't even flinch. Well, at least they didn't try to breed with the idea of immortality itself. Give it time. Marna just shook his head. Maybe I'll just quit. Let someone else try to figure out what the hell to do with them. Good luck with that, Roka said. The Bureau would fall apart without you. Then maybe it's time it did fall apart, Marna muttered darkly. Maybe we need to evolve along with them. At least then we might stand a chance. Roka smirked. Welcome to the future, Marna. At least now we're both on the same page. They both stared at the latest report, the endless list of human, mating experiments, flashing on the screen in front of them. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. But for better or worse, they were part of the disaster now. And somehow, they would have to learn to survive it.